Lots of comments coming in, some of them in relation to Dundalk last night. So if you've got thoughts about that, it's impacting the League of Ireland. If you're from Dundalk, whatever they might be, get them into us this morning, because that's exactly where we're headed now. We're about to get into our weekly post-massive European night check-in with the Dundalk coach, Shane Keegan. First of all, the man of the hour, Filippo Giovagnoli.
The feeling is unbelievable now. I am just a little bit, upset with the performance. That could be better, but tonight we were so nervous. We were feeling the game so much, and listen, it's normal. It was a final. It was a so important game, and you can see players nervous when in the build-up, when you start to miss passes, you make decisions. With the first touch is not clean, and the field was really fast. But at the end of the day, what is important tonight is the result. Is get through. It's important. We made history, right? We are in the history now, so we are proud of that. Yeah, no, I didn't say anything. They were celebrating. I let them be. Somebody was dancing, so I let them be. They have to celebrate. This is their moment. I call me and Giuseppe facilitator, and help them to perform. That's why tonight, as a coach, you can't be happy as a coach with the performance, but with the effort, with the willing to get through, to work together, yes, of course. But with the technical performance, not really. But listen, again, what is important is the result. We are through. We are happy. And we have just to keep going to work. I am so happy. I am so happy for me, for Giuseppe, for our families that they support us, for our friends in New York, at Metoval, in my academy, they support us. My village in Italy, Apecchio, they are going crazy. We are happy, of course, but the most important now is important the club. That is this result. I think is going to help the club to build a new journey, right? Something special for the future. No, tomorrow we are off, so I know that they're gonna watch the draw, and I'm gonna watch the draw with Giuseppe. Usually we watch me and him, and it's so funny when we watch the draw with him. It's unbelievable. But yes, I'm looking forward to see what we're gonna have.
Yeah, that's the Dundalk manager, Filippo Giovagnoli, and Shane Keegan, the Dundalk background coach, joins us on the line as well. Good morning to you, Shane. Again, as always on a Friday morning, we're making a habit of this.
Yeah, it's a habit I'd be more than happy to keep, that's for sure, yeah.
A day off, the top man says, is that what it looks like for you?
Day off for me, not a hope in hell. You're joking me. I've a presentation to put together on Finn Harps for tomorrow morning. So I have. So yeah, it'll be a full steam ahead on that front for me, I'm afraid.
What was it like last night?
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. It really was. I mean, look, as Filippo has said, I think it was far from our greatest performance, that's for sure. Thought it probably took about a half an hour for us to get motor at all. Last 15 minutes of the first half, we were really good. It was probably about the only period of the game where we were really good, if we're completely honest about it. But look, on a night like last night, it really was all about the result, and it probably at 2-1 looked a bit hairy for a little while, that's for sure. And even before that, just our overall performance, there was just a lot of nervousness in it, I suppose. But that's, I think that has to be reasonably understandable. But and even the 3-1, I mean, Gary Rogers made an unbelievable save within a minute or two of us going 3-1 up. That could have pulled it back to 3-2 very quickly, and you're back with your hairy moments again. But look, as I say, even though it wasn't our best performance, I think we were full value for the win at the same time,
Yeah, it's probably not much point in asking an opposition analyst if he was surprised by what happened last night, because that would be probably against your job description. But certainly, like you say, that opening half hour, for that 10-minute spell in the second half, like they were very impressive, weren't they? They were very compact at the back, made it very difficult for you to get into your stride.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, to be honest with you, it was from an opposition analysis point of view, it was a great game to have, because previous games you were guessing, would this fella be in or would that fella be in, and will they go with a back three tonight or will they go with a back four? That was another thing we were trying to figure out in previous games. These boys are rock solid. These boys are rock solid. They play the same formation, the same shape. They've had the exact same starting 11 for the previous 3-4 games. We knew exactly what we were coming up against last night, which is a help in terms of preparing everybody for it and everybody knowing exactly what's going to happen and how. But knowing what the opposition will do and trying to stop them doing what they're good at is two very, very different things. And the set pieces, I heard you talking about it earlier. The set pieces are a huge part of their game plan. There's no doubt, and it's not exactly the biggest secret in the world that it's an area that we had been struggling on. We had been struggling badly on set pieces. I think 5 of our last 6 goals we conceded were set pieces. We changed how we went about that last night, and I thought that made a big difference to us. And another, I suppose, interesting thing on it is these boys were doing very, very well in their own domestic league. They've only had one bad result in the last couple of months, really. But it was interesting when I went back and looked at the goals from that bad result. The phrase I used yesterday, because we'd been kind of comparing them to Stoke under Tony Pulis, the one bad result they had where they were bet 6-2, they had actually got out-stoked because every goal they conceded was a corner, a free, a long throw. So we thought, right, well, let's stop talking about how much of a threat they are from set pieces and let's actually focus on, can we go and find a weakness in that on the other side of things for ourselves to exploit. So for Dan Cleary to get a goal for us from a set piece like that was satisfying as well,
Yeah, because they're a team that, certainly in Europe anyway, that operate on very little possession and still manage to score a hatful of goals. As a opposition analyst, that's where do you begin with that? And as you say, exactly what you're going to get with them. That doesn't necessarily make it any easier to beat them.
Yeah, exactly. They're ruthlessly efficient, and they're a bit unusual in how they go about it. They pick players for very specific roles. If you're watching a Premier League game of soccer in England and a team are playing with a diamond, and essentially it's kind of a diamond. It's a diamond when they have it, and it flattens out then when they don't have it. But the guy at the tip of the diamond is traditionally the most creative force within the team. The guy they were playing at the tip of the diamond is an incredibly energetic, hard-working. He's played most of his career at centre back. But because of the way they play and getting on second balls and trying to disrupt your flow, that's the kind of job description they've gone with for a guy that they want at the tip of the diamond. And so it's an unusual challenge. It's a very, very different challenge to what we would face, I suppose, in our own league. And yeah, it took a lot of work by the players, a lot of work by Filippo coming up with a game plan to try and come up with something that was never ever going to be easy, but we got there.
Yeah. Just on your analysis of it then, Shane, we talked a little bit about your own role last night, but so are you looking at those clips of KI in the lead into it and presenting that back by way of, listen, here's what they're going to do, or are you presenting it back by way of, here's what they're going to do and here's what we're going to get around that?
Yeah, the second. You're trying to do the second. There's no point just presenting, if you're going to present one of the weaknesses, well, then you have to describe, okay, and here's how we're going to try and take advantage of that weakness. And if you're presenting a strength, you have to say, and here's how we're going to try and guard against that strength. So that is definitely part of the role. And at the same time, always conscious that you don't want to overburden fellas with information. Some fellas, when I'm looking down into the group, some fellas I can clearly see by their body language, are taking in absolutely every word I'm saying. And then other fellas, I'd probably have to remind them 5 minutes before we walk onto the pitch who exactly we're playing against,
We all have people like that in our lives, Shane. That's the way life works. Come here, Brian Kerr, I don't know if you've listened to too much of it yet, and maybe hold off for a few hours, but he's obviously looking at it from the broader point of view. He did mention at one point that somebody from Dundalk had been on to him about for his own thoughts about obviously football in the Faroes, and he identified the weakness in the keeper. He wasn't great, was he?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. It was I gave Brian a shout on Tuesday there, so I did, just to get a few bits and pieces off him. And look, he was fairly bang on with any of the info he gave me as well, in fairness to him. The pitch he had highlighted that the pitch was going to be our biggest friend, really. I think having gone to games out there, he was kind of saying that a lot they're used to playing on match boxes really in terms of the size of the pitches, and a lot of them being Astros. So we needed to try and take advantage of that, and I suppose we certainly did come the third goal. So we did, but yeah, he was very, very helpful on that front. I did see the interview. He wasn't exactly jumping for joy for us, but at the same time he helped play a small little role in it.
Yeah. How deep does his Faroese knowledge go?
Yeah, look, I would like to think we knew everything that we needed to know. As I say, it was a hell of a lot easier because there's such a steady lineup. So it was, as I say, in the previous rounds there was a lot of chopping and changing. There was the Andorran side that we played Inter. I mean, they had a mad setup where they had a kind of a some sort of relationship with FC Andorra, who play in La Liga, and there was players bouncing between the two clubs, and genuinely you couldn't figure out who was currently an Inter player and who was currently an FC Andorra player. So that was really, really tough. Whereas say this time it was a hell of a lot more straightforward. We called the 11 that we thought would play did play. They played in exactly the manner that we expected them to play. So but look, like you've said yourselves, that doesn't necessarily make it easier. I mean, one thing I would say, for example, like so the guy who scored the goal, the big 17, he's 6'4". He's very much the focal point of their build-up play. But he's we did a piece yesterday on him, and I think it was Sean Hoare might have said to me, Shane, he's left-footed, is he? And I said, yep, absolutely. And we showed a couple of goals. They'd come off his left foot, showed one or two good crosses he'd put in. They'd scored off his left foot. So when he receives that ball last night, like, the boys did absolutely everything they could to shift him onto his right foot, and then he buries it in the back of the net off his right foot. So sometimes all the analysis in the world doesn't help,
Yeah, you mentioned the rest of Brian Kerr's quotes last night, and whether or not you agree with the tone. I guess the general sentiment was that the money and the windfall that has now occurred needs to go back into the facilities in Dundalk. Like, he did call Oriel Park an embarrassment, even at League of Ireland level. It's dreadful, is what he said. But I guess the general tone of reinvesting that money now back into the club is surely something that everybody goes along with.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Brian isn't saying anything too far off the mark there. Everybody, those associated with the club, know the facilities aren't good enough, and you would like to think that there's definitely going to be some sort of an attempt made to use the money to improve things on that respect. Just, I suppose, given my own interests, and I would have been, still am kind of involved with underage soccer a lot, and have a big interest in that. I'd love to see a lot of the money go into the underage structure and trying to improve the underage structure in the club, because you've got a lot of people doing the very best they can in the underage structure. But I don't think anybody would argue against the fact that we're a hell of a distance behind the likes of Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers, who are doing fantastic work at underage level and consistently producing some great players. I think I'd love to see us try to funnel some of the money in that direction that would try and bring us on a par with them in that sense. Whether it gets spread across the wider league, I have absolutely no idea what'll happen on that front or what way all that'll go. But yeah, look, it's important that it's used in the right way. That's for sure.
When you mention underage structures there, where does that money go first? Is it into the facilities? Is it into the coaches? Where do you spend that money? Like when you use that term, underage structures?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. Right. It's just trying to create an overall setup that's enticing for young players. Now, look, geographically, we're going to be at a disadvantage, no matter what way you go about it. But I do think at the same time there could be, an awful lot done to help the coaches make, I suppose, our underage structure a more appealing place to try and pull. I mean, essentially, if Dundalk are going to be one of the biggest clubs in the country for the foreseeable future, then it'd be great to have some local Dundalk players in that underage structure. But really, you've got to be pulling from the whole country. And I don't know, is there a possibility? I would have been over at St Mirren before, and they were on our pro license. They were one of the first clubs in Scotland to manage to establish a stay overnight facility, a boarding facility for their underage players. I don't know, could the club go that far in terms of trying to do something like that players can move up to Dundalk and stay somewhere together and train and get their education and stuff like that. I know that's all kind of, big stuff, big picture stuff, but it would be brilliant to see something like that happen, because there's only so much of a pool in the immediate area in Dundalk, and I think for a big club like Dundalk, they need to be pulling from as far, really the whole country.
That's a really interesting point, and it's a full acceptance of the fact that maybe half the kids who come up, I don't know what the percentage would be, wouldn't actually make it to the very top level, either fully professional in the League of Ireland or whatever the path may be, and actually offering education and a structured way of life to allow both of those aspects of their life to continue. That can't possibly be a negative. It'll actually be quite an appealing prospect for any talented young Dublin kid.
Oh, look, any structure that you'd bring in terms of trying to entice players has got to, in my opinion, include some form of an education pathway. Absolutely has to, because as you say, I think the current research is that those who sign scholarships, I think there's 3% of them left in the game by the age of 21 over there. So I don't know, could you get Dundalk IT involved? I know they are to a certain extent already. Could you get them even more involved in that pathway? Get local schools involved? It'd be really, really brilliant and make it a real viable option, that here's a dual career pathway that we've created up here, and that could entice fellas from far beyond Dublin. You'd be looking to pull them from literally all four corners of the country.
Yeah, it'll be one of the most interesting things to see how all that plays out. And obviously the group who own Dundalk are running a business as well, so like how much do they look to reinvest in all of those levels? Like Brian himself said, it'll be interesting to watch, and we'll see how it obviously all unfolds. And the very idea of obviously making Dundalk, like a lot of that sort of carrot to bring in underage players and to facilitate Dundalk becoming one of the best teams consistently, or the best in the country, is obviously tied into what you're doing at the minute and the achievements that you have at the minute, and dominating the back pages today and being the main talking point in shows like this. Leicester, Milan, Celtic, Spurs, Arsenal, Eindhoven, what are you thinking?
Yeah, look, so I'm a Spurs fan, so it's fairly obvious enough, although I'm also a Celtic fan. I suppose going into last night, depending on who qualified, the way the coefficients would work out, if all of the favourites had won last night, Tottenham, Spurs would have been in Pool 1 and Celtic would have been in Pool 2, which is what I was hoping for and wishing, and then thinking could we possibly end up with the two of them? They're now both in Pool 1, so if I get one or the other, I'd be happy enough on that front. We were in the dressing room last night in the middle of all the celebrations after it, and we managed to get up. We got a few cans in and that, so we could have a few drinks in the dressing room before we had to kind of disperse. And one of the boys got up a live stream of the AC Milan penalty shootout. So Giuseppe is a diehard AC Milan fan. So obviously was hoping and praying that we draw them, but first he needed them to get through. So I swear to God, he did more leaping and jumping and roaring and screaming watching the penalty shootout than he did during our game, I think. So from his point of view, that's definitely the draw that he wants. But look, wouldn't it just be fantastic to have a few of those big names coming across and us getting the head off to a few places like that? So hopefully one or two big names coming out there, all right.
You'd rather that than the easier tie of some of the lesser known names?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was naming out the clubs that I'd like, and then one of the boys did turn around and say, Jesus, will you give us some sort of a hope? Will you at least give us one minnow in the group that we can try and pick up a few points from? So yeah, look, you'd probably maybe two big fish and one maybe slightly lesser known name maybe might be a decent balance to it.
Yeah, I think we'd all, from the outsiders looking in, obviously we'd be a bit along those lines too, like to see some of those bigger clubs coming in. Shane, we kicked off an awful conversation last weekend when we got into our chat about whether you were going to play Rovers at the weekend or not, and it took a life of its own after that, and obviously the game went ahead, and so much as it was. The rest of the season now looks like absolute carnage, and including if the schedule stays the way it is, there's one of the Europa League games is going to be followed 24 hours later by the last round of games in the domestic league season, which have to go ahead with all teams playing at the same time, which is effectively an immovable feast unless they move the entire day's schedule. What are your thoughts about how to manage all this now?
Yep, it's going to be pretty insane, all right, so it is. But look, you know, we have a big squad. We were unfortunate last week. I think the team that we put out last week would have been capable with mixing it with the vast majority of the League of Ireland. We were just unfortunate that we were running into a team as strong as Rovers and in the kind of form that they are. Yeah, look, we're you know, even before the Europa League starts, our biggest break is going to be from this. So we play Harps this Sunday, and then we have Pats on Friday. That's the only 5-day break we're going to have for the next, I think, 2 months, pretty much. So we're looking at pretty much every 3 days from there on, which is going to raise some questions or some challenges for us. Certainly, so it is. But look, it's, you know, it's the situation we've put ourselves in. It's the situation we wanted to be in. So now we just have to deal with it. We showed again last night. You know, you don't like singling out players, I suppose, in any kind of scenario. But Daniel Kelly last night coming off the bench to score the 3rd goal for us. If I could pick one player, Dan would probably be the one. You know, he's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic fella. He's absolutely hilarious. The man would have you in stitches laughing the whole time. But you know, he's battling for a position there. He's maybe doesn't get quite as many starts as he wants, but comes off the bench last night and does absolutely brilliantly to score a goal. You know, fellas like that are going to be starting week in, week out, going to get a huge amount of game time. Fellas who haven't maybe got as much game time as they wanted up till now, going to get a huge amount of game time from here on. So that's the positive way of looking at it, rather than looking at, you know, being tired or anything in that front. I think all our squad, we're going. We have a lot of really, really, really quality players here. So let's just embrace the fact that it's going to be carnage basically for the next 3 months and do as best as we possibly can. You know.
Yeah, Filippo was talking after the game last night and talking about the prospect of facing Tottenham. Have a listen.
I would love to play against Jose Mourinho because I think he's an icon in soccer, right? So just to meet him on the pitch will be great.